Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. This is going to be a very short lesson. The title of this lesson is Rejoicing at the Fall of Our Enemies. Once again, this lesson is entitled Rejoicing at the Fall of Our Enemies. Brace yourselves, tighten up your jaws, do not turn to the left or to the right, or you will get hit in the mouth. We are to walk the straight and narrow way of the Most High's commandments. When the Most High renders righteous justice and judgment towards our enemies, and they are punished, and their ways are brought upon their own heads for what they have done to our people, we're not to gloat. We're not to celebrate this thing in the street. We are to remain steadfast in the Most High's law. We are to be thankful that He has come to our aid. And we are to continue to walk within His law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, that He will continually be before us in the face of our enemies, and that He will fight with us and for us. Now, let's turn to Proverbs, and we will get this clearly established, that when we see the Chauvins, or whatever his name is, and these other murderers of our people, when we see them handed justice, and we're going to start seeing more and more of this, as the tables turn. Isaiah chapter 14. And those who have oppressed us and murdered us, as these things befall them, as all the plagues that's befallen us start to fall upon their own heads, and that plight hits them and their children. We're not to gloat, we're not to celebrate and get excited. What we are to do is to remain steadfast in the Most High's law. Now, let's go ahead and turn to Proverbs chapter 24. Proverbs chapter 24, we will read verse 17 through verse 20. And verse 17 of Proverbs chapter 24 reads, Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth. Verse 18, Lest Yah see it, and it displease him, and he turn away his wrath from him. So when you start gloating and acting besides yourself because justice was rendered and righteousness was rendered to the wicked, once you start gloating and doing all manner of madness, then the Most High is going to ease up off your enemies because you're acting out of order. So when you see this thing being done, you ought to understand that that is what's supposed to be done. There's no need for you to get excited about something that's supposed to be so. I want you to understand that. So let me read verse 18 once again. Lest Yah see it, the Most High see your foolishness, and it displeases him, and he turneth away his wrath from him. In other words, he see you gloating in the street, acting stupid. And what he's going to do, he's going to turn his back away. He's going to back up off your enemies. All of a sudden, he's not fighting for you anymore because you don't understand how to act. Verse 19, Fret not thyself because of evil men, lest now we worried about the Derek Chauvins and all these other monsters that's before us that's been murdering our people. Neither be thou envious at the wicked. No need to be worried about Elon Musk and all these other men that's multi-gazillionaires. All of these men, if you check their track record, they're from nations and they're from families that have murdered and slaughtered our people. So we're not to be caught up in trying to be like these men. These are evil men, and their end is their destruction and the destruction of their children. Verse 19, Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. For there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. So, all these wicked individuals who have murdered us, enslaved us, killed our people, slaughtered them, taken their substance, and have polluted our minds with lies and idols. These are all wicked men. We're not to fear them. That's number one. We're not to seek to be like them. That's number two. We're certainly not to seek to marry them. We're to distance ourselves from the ways, their customs, their laws, and most certainly from their idols. And when the Most High begins to fight for us, and he begins to plague them, and he begins to disease them, and he begins to strip their knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, and the violence that's been in the midst of us for years is now in the midst of them. And the confusion that we have faced for centuries is now in the midst of them. We're not to gloat. We're not to rejoice. We're simply to strengthen ourselves in the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. There is no love lost. I'm not trying to help them. These are our enemies. They have to pay for what was done and what they have done. Now, let me touch on that really quickly before I wrap this one up. There's many of the European nations, many Europeans, Caucasians, white people that you see today that will tell you clearly, I didn't enslave anybody. I don't have to pay reparations. I don't owe you nothing. I get that. We've heard that. I don't owe you anything. I didn't enslave you. My forefathers did it. I'm not responsible for my forefathers. This is the common cry of Europeans, of white people. Once you present this, you have done us wrong. When you present that argument to them, that is what they give you. If you don't get that, you will get this. What are you so mad about? You got a house. You got a nice car. You've got a good job. You've got some money. Heck, you've got more money than I got. How you figure I owe you something? So what do you got to complain about? You've never been enslaved. You've never had to pick cotton. What's your beef? Why are you so upset? Why do you want reparations? We're all the same. We're all in this together. This is what you may hear. All right. This is to address the European that's going to say, I don't owe you anything. My fathers may have done this wrong to you. I didn't do it. I don't owe you anything, and I ain't going to pay you nothing. All right, understand this. You have been duped. You have been made to believe that somehow you and your father are two entirely separate men. This is not the case. I want you to understand that every male carries a Y chromosome. You are alive now, meaning that every man before you is within you. You are your father, you are your great-grandfather, and 10 generations before him, you are that man. You are just that man in a different generation. The Most High has made it plain that he will punish those who walk contrary to his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts to the third and the fourth generation. So as these generations continue to do that which is wicked, that curse or those generational curses, whether it be the house of Israel or other individuals who are walking contrary to the Most High's law, those curses continue to multiply generation after generation. So to the European man that states, I didn't enslave your people, so therefore I don't owe you anything, you need to understand that you do. You need to understand that you are your fathers before you. You are that man. You are his genes. You are his seed. You are just another generation or a different generation of those men. So if you are a white man that has any bit of righteousness in you, then you would be able to acknowledge the faults of your fathers in generations past. And what you would seek to do, you would seek to right that wrong, the wrong of your fathers, by turning back, by turning to the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. But I have said in videos past that a father teaches his son. And the manner by which these European nations have dealt with my people throughout the diaspora, it has been done in an unrighteous manner. And I have made it clear that a father teaches his sons and his daughters. So an unrighteous man can't possibly teach righteousness. So if your forefathers dealt with us in an unrighteous and a foul manner, there's no way that you know how to deal with us now, because you have learned what he has taught you. You don't know what righteousness is. And because the European does not know what righteousness is, these European nations have never had any peace. This is why they're always in a perpetual state of war. They have not known the Most High, and they have murdered and enslaved the Most High's people. And so all these men through the generations, you're looking at them dead in the face right now. So all the men that has hated our people and have hung them, you're looking at them right now. You're looking at their sons and their daughters. It's the same exact people. You're just looking at them in a different generation. That is all. And the Most High will punish us through the generations. So as we begin to wake up to what righteousness is now, both the European, the heathen, all of these different nations, as well as the house of Israel, as we begin to wake up in this generation and we understand clearly what righteousness is, what we must do, we must now turn, face Jerusalem, lift our hands in prayer, acknowledge our faults, acknowledge the faults of our forefathers before us who have transgressed the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And once we have made that atonement, we have made that acknowledgement, now we are to correct our ways going forward, that he may bless and forgive us in this generation and make us prosperous in the next generation by removing those generational curses. So the European has a choice. He could A, turn back, acknowledge that fault, and understand that his forefathers have dealt unjustly with the Most High's people. That's one choice. Or he can continue to take his stand. I don't owe you nothing, don't care nothing about you. And when I see wickedness, I'm going to act like I don't. And that's what they have been doing. However, the men of Israel have been guilty of the same thing because they feel as though I'm me. No, you are that man that was before you. And so you've been taught all these manner of craziness. If you are a man and you have a father, you look that man in the face and you're pretty much looking yourself in the face. And you're looking your great-grandfather in the face. So when you look at your father probably looked just like your grandfather. You probably look like your grandfather. You also probably look like your uncle. Your nephew probably looks like you. Why is this? Because you're all the men of the same seed. Of the same seed. So don't you go and get to thinking that, you know what, I don't owe y'all nothing because I didn't do that. Yes, you did. You just did that in generations past. It's still on your head. And that's how the Most High punishes generation after generation. When Rehoboam got his head busted and got the whole kingdom of Israel stripped from him, do you think he knew, man, this is being done to me because of what my father did? Solomon messed up. Rehoboam got the kingdom stripped from him because of what Solomon did. Solomon was given some reprieve because of what his father David did. So let's run that back. David was given a covenant with the Most High. Most High told him that you will always be before me throughout the generations. I will have a man of your seed. You will always sit before me. But if you're any of the men of your seed, if you ever mess up throughout these generations, I'm going to punish you for it. Solomon came along. Solomon messed up. But the Most High told Solomon, I'm not going to stick it to you in this generation. I'm not going to get you now. I'm going to get you in the next generation. I'm going to get your son. And the only reason I'm sparing you now is because of the love that I have for your father David. So because of your father David, I'm not going to get you right now. I'm going to get you next generation. It's all still David. Is the Most High keeping his covenant with David through the generations? Because from David to Solomon to Rehoboam to the rest of them, all of those men of David, they're his seed. So when you start talking about, I didn't do anything to you, I don't owe you nothing, you're incorrect. You need to go in this book and read it. That way you understand clearly that the Most High will take these generational curses and move it from one generation to the next until a man of righteousness rises up in that generation and acknowledge the faults of his forefathers. But when you acknowledge the faults of your forefathers, what you're doing, you're acknowledging your own faults because you are those men. So I hope that becomes clear to anyone that's saying, I didn't enslave you. I don't owe you nothing. I'm not the one that locked you up. I'm not the one that killed you. Yes, you are. You're the one that did it, and you're the one that benefited from it. I didn't make the laws against you. Yes, you did. It is you. It is just you in a different generation. That is all. Now, for the Israelite that's presenting that you have all this and that, we're all the same. What's your beef? What's your complaint? See, the thing is that our enemies want us to feel as though we owe them something instead of the other way around. And so they will use any level of success that you may have attained to justify the fact that, hey, look, I don't owe you nothing. Look at you. You're doing well. You're a multimillionaire. You have this. You have that. Matter of fact, you're doing better than me. So how you figure that I owe you something when you're doing better than me? And this is the ploy and the trick that has been played upon our people. And many of our people don't have an answer for any of this. When someone presents that to them, well, you're a basketball player. You're making $100 million a year. What are you complaining about? I listened to an interview the other day where Pete Rose was on CNBC. And he was stating that LeBron James should just play basketball because all of a sudden LeBron James is doing something that he's just never been known to do or doesn't understand. As if LeBron James just became a black man in America yesterday. The same struggle and strife that a poor black man endures, so does a rich one. Your finances at no time allows you to escape these curses. Neither does your geopolitical position, if you have a political position, or your geographical location. These curses are everywhere. You cannot outrun them. Neither can your money outrun these curses. So you being rich, they'll call you the N-word just the same. So you're not able to escape it. And to any Israelite that thinks that he is rich, and there's several of them out there, you are not rich if your money is being held in your enemy's banks. I want you to understand that. So we're seeing that this justice was administered to this murderer. And what you're going to see more murderers stand up. So now it's a battle of attrition. It's the unrighteous versus the righteous. You're going to have unrighteous white people against righteous white people. You're going to have unrighteous Israelites against righteous Israelites. And all the people of the earth is going to have that great separation. Are you for righteousness or are you for wickedness? And what we're going to see is that many people here and throughout the diaspora, many of these Europeans will rise up in wickedness against our people. But there will be a counterbalance to that because there will be those who will also stand up in righteousness. So when we see them kill us and the Most High administer justice unto them, and that justice is rendered, we're not to get in the street and start dancing and all these other things. Because when you do that, he's going to turn away from you. And what's going to happen is these murders are going to start to increase because they're going to rise up. The wicked man is not going to just take this thing lying down. And I want you also to understand this, that everyone is going to stand in his lot. That means this, the ones that are wicked, and that's their lot, they're going to do what they're supposed to do because the wicked man's purpose is also to serve the Most High. The Most High raised up Pharaoh for the sole purpose of killing them. So you have wicked men that's going to be raised up. That's going to remain wicked. They will not hear this word. This word will be noise in their ears because their lot is to be destroyed. And I want you to kind of understand that. That's why you're not to be trying to convince anyone. You present them the Most High's law, statute, judgments, and precepts, have them deal with that. And those that are going to turn to righteousness, they're going to do it. That's their lot. That's their designation. And then there are those who will be in total opposition to this law, will reject it at every turn. Their lot is their destruction. There's nothing you're going to do to change that either. So, when we're dealing with our enemies, do not gloat when this justice is rendered unto them. And we will see more and more of this, and they will retaliate. Every time one of them goes to jail, they're going to kill more of us. We are at war. When you go to war, you need fighters. And we cannot go fighting unless the Most High is before us. So once again, we're seeing these killings they're going to increase. But the killing that we're seeing is the small end of the spectrum. When we see them shoot us, it's going to increase because it's going to come to a head. But I want you to think of this. When we see 1, 2, or 3, or 100, or 150 of our men killed in front of our sight, in cold blood and unrighteously via the camera, and it upsets us, it's supposed to. But I want you to think of our babies that's been killed at the abortion clinics. I want you to think of our men that's been killed with the alcoholism and the drug abuse. I want you to think of our men who've been killed in the wars, fighting a war for their enemies, and they were not smart enough to realize that they were toting weapons for their enemies. Think of the war as far as them poisoning and killing us based on the pollution in the cities in which we live. The cancers that's being given out by these towers up in the sky. The pollution in the cities. The poisoning of the water. The poisoning of the food. What we're seeing before our eyes is a small aspect of our killing. We're being killed in mass numbers in many different areas, some of which I have just mentioned. And we're dying in the medical industrial complex and the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex in greater numbers than we're being gunned down in the street. So when we seek justice, we have to start looking at this thing in its entirety, that we're being killed in a wide scale, on a wide scope, in many different areas. And so once again, like I've just finished doing that lesson, we've got to uplift the standard, but you got to uplift it first in the midst of your own house. And so we're to watch our enemies. They're going to continue to fight. They're going to continue to swing, and we're not going to stand still. We have to raise up men who are willing to fight, warriors. The priest of the Most High, the sons of Levi, valiant men. These are men that will fight. These are not men you're going to just run up on. So this thing that our leaders and those who are going to teach this word are supposed to be some kind of effeminate homosexual man, this is the image that's presented to you by the Catholic Church, by the Christian Church, by the Roman Church. The men that's going to raise up in this law and teach this righteousness, you run up on them, you're going to have some problems. Because we're going to come with the Most High's fire. We got to fight. And we've got to raise up our people by which they are willing to fight. So just lay down and let you kick me in the face and then turn to the other side so you can kick me in the other side of the face. That's Christianity. And that has failed us for centuries and will continue to do so. So the men of Israel and the women of Israel, we have got to rise up. An exceedingly great army, and the army fights once again. And we are in a fight for our lives against our enemies. Now, we must understand this. We have these enemies all around us because we have become enemies unto the Most High. Once we do this, if you and the Most High are enemies, you have got absolutely no friends. And that is the position that we are in currently. We have no friends because we have become enemies unto the Most High. How so? We have taken his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. We balled it up, chucked it behind our back, and decided we don't want to hear that. And because we have done this wicked thing, the Most High became an enemy unto us, and he delivered us unto the hands of our enemies. So now we have no peace. We can't find justice. And now we're getting confused. We're asking for freedom. A quote unquote Israelite, a black man, has all the freedom that he needs. What our people are seeking, we're seeking the freedom to do what we want to do. We are seeking the freedom to do what the Europeans do. That's what we want. That's not going to be allowed. You're not going to have the freedom to do what you want to do. You have already been ordained and commanded what it is you are to do. And you're not going to make things up on your own on the way. You're not allowed to. So, We're to take all of these things into consideration. Be mindful that we are at war. And when you see them go to jail like this, believe me, they have all types of contingency plans by which to retaliate for what was done. So the wicked man has no care for justice, has no care for righteousness, and have no care for peace. That is why he is always in a state of war. And the only way to counter all of this is to turn to the Most High, his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And once we do that, we'll take on our enemies. And we're going to fight them. With the Most High before us, we're going to fight them. And we're going to beat them. We've always beaten them when we had the Most High before us. But keep in mind, it's the Most High that has caused our enemies to come at us in this fashion because we have become enemies unto him. Should we reconcile ourselves back onto the Most High, he will cause our enemies to be at peace with us, and we will win our battles. But we are not to be in the streets celebrating because this killer was given his just deserts. And I said it before, I say it again. There are Europeans out here who are highly upset and angry that a murderer, a killer, has been sentenced for murder. That's where you are right now. When you have to fight a people for civil rights, you should know those people are uncivil. When you see wickedness in the midst of these people and the lawlessness in the midst of them, you should have a clear idea of who you are around and what you are in the midst of. Separate yourself, Israel. This is more than you can bear. Separate yourself from your enemies. You are commanded to do so. When the Most High gather us out of these nations, you cannot be joined unto them. Their ways, their customs, their laws, their idols, or their women. These are things to be mindful of. We are at war. And not because you don't have the guts to fight means you cannot be a casualty of this war. You standing still will not save you. You've got to be active. You've got to turn to this law that you may be strengthened against your enemies. Because like it or not, your enemies are coming. Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Do not gloat when we see these bums, these enemies of ours, be given their just deserts. Peace, Israel. Yah bless.